Welcome everybody. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Public seating has been made available and this meeting is also webcast to allow the public to view remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Some housekeeping information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign up when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Everyone speaking will be on camera. Members of the press and public are also permitted, there's vast numbers of them here, I notice, is permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use their microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. Right, we'll do some introductions. Graham.
I'm Councillor Graham Healy and I'm the Labour Group spokesperson on Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you. Simon?
I'm Councillor Simon Bowsher. I'm the Conservative Group spokesman for Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you. Andy?
Andy Bullock, Active Travel Officer, Safer Travel.
Michelle?
Michelle Love, Safer Travel Manager.
Thank you. Kevin?
Kevin McKee, Parking Manager.
And I don't know.
Joe Eldridge, Transport Team, Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you. Hayley?
Hayley Chivers, Interim Transport Planning Manager.
Gareth?
Gareth James, Future Transport Zone Project Manager.
Felicity?
Felicity Tidbury, Acting Assistant Director for Transport.
Pam?
Pam Zerton, Assistant Director for Transport.
And Wayne?
Wayne Layton, Finance Manager.
Thank you very much, everybody. Right, any apologies for absence? I don't think so. It's all of us here, up there. Yes. Any declarations of interest? Graham? Simon? Okay, thank you. Right, first item then, or item 3 on the agenda is the Local Transport Plan 4 implementation plan. And are you presenting this, Hayley? Thank you.
So this report is to seek approval for an updated LTP4 implementation plan for the period 2022-23 to 24-25. This is following funding allocations agreed at full council on the 15th of February, which contribute to the Portsmouth Transport Strategy, LTP4, namely 943,000 for LTP4, 500,000 for transport infrastructure and 200,000 for the transport hub. The report provides detail on the LTP4 programme. The recommendations of the report are that the attached Local Transport Plan 4, Funded Schemes 2022-23, Appendix A, is adopted as part of Portsmouth LTP4 Implementation Plan 2022-23 to 24-25. Authority is delegated to the Director of Regeneration in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation and the Section 151 Officer to update the Local Transport Plan 4 Implementation Plan with the attached proposed Local Transport Plan Funded Scheme List, Appendix A. Authority is delegated to the Director of Regeneration in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation and the Section 151 Officer to agree any minor amendments to the implementation plan that may be required to take account of future funding changes and relevant national policy guidance. Notes that the funded infrastructure programme, transport hub funding and other revenue and externally funded highways and transport work programmes contribute to the delivery of the LTP4 and the implementation plan 22-23 to 24-25, and it will be updated to include these, and that the process for monitoring of LTP4 be noted and the process of governance of LTP4 be noted. The background of the report outlines the statutory requirement for Portsmouth City Council to have a local transport plan comprising of 2 parts, a long-term strategy and a short-term implementation plan. In response to the changing transport challenges, a new local transport plan was developed and LTP4 was adopted at full council in October 2021. With the strategy setting out long-term policies to address the period 2021 to 2038, and the accompanying implementation plan highlighting priority work streams for delivery in the first 3 years, but acknowledging an annual review based on funding. The LTP4 is the overarching document for all transport and highway works, also supporting wider council strategy and policy and sitting within national and sub-regional policy guidance. The LTP4 vision is by 2038, Portsmouth will have a people-centred, connected travel network that prioritises walking, cycling and public transport to help deliver a safer, healthier and more prosperous city. The strategic objectives are deliver cleaner air, prioritise walking and cycling, transform public transport and support business and protect our assets. The implementation plan covers all transport and highways works to be delivered over the next 3 years, as mentioned, reviewed on an annual basis. Appendix A details the schemes prioritised for delivery using the allocated LTP4 budget for the 2022-23 period. Each scheme will be developed and have engagement and consultation on a scheme-by-scheme basis, ensuring stakeholder buy-in. As outlined, a number of daughter transport strategies are due to be developed. The prioritisation of these is being undertaken to inform the order the strategies are brought forward. Other updates to the implementation plan will include more details on governance and monitoring processes, and it's proposed that a quarterly officer board will be held to review progress against the delivery of the strategy. The board will report to the Cabinet member at quarterly update meetings and bringing an annual report to the Cabinet member's Traffic and Transportation meeting with an annual monitoring report. The reasons for recommendations are that the LTP4 implementation plan sets out the schemes, initiatives and transport strategies which will work towards the delivery of the LTP4 strategy vision and objectives. Following the recent allocation of funding for the 2022-23 implementation plan by full council, the programme schemes, initiatives and transport strategies to be delivered can now be proposed for the 22-23 implementation plan, and adoption of the LTP4 implementation plan by April 2022 is a statutory requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayley. Right, any questions? Councillor Bosher.
That was pretty concise. Thank you. Am I correct when I look at Appendix A, and these are essentially overarching strategies, and there may well be specific projects that fall under each individual heading? People nodding at me.
Yes, there'll be locations that will be prioritised to fit under those headings.
Okay, because I mean, it was essentially says all wards down beside every single one of them, and of course when I look at it, and I think air quality action plan, all wards, that's clearly not an air quality action plan for every single ward, because I suspect that Farlington Marshes, which I represent, probably doesn't necessarily need the same air quality action plan that perhaps Somerstown does.
Exact locations aren't known at this time because we need to undertake some feasibility and looking at various data before focusing on which schemes will be undertaken under these scheme headings.
I just wondered to what extent, I mean, the CAS has to be, the air in Portsmouth has to be, what's the word I want? It has to be under 40 micrograms of NO2 per cubic metre right across the city before the CAS is decommissioned. So I don't know if that's anything to do with it. Does that make sense to anybody here, or am I just talking rubbish? Pam?
Yes, so there are, in addition to the CAS, we still need to, as you say, make improvements across the city in terms of the quality of the air within the city. There remains a number of air quality management areas, and we are still required to follow the directions around local air quality action plans and a local air quality strategy, which will seek to improve it citywide, but also specifically looking at the AQMAs as a priority. So the CAS is very much one of a number of things that we will be doing and are still required to do.
So if that's the case, you have to have evidence, so that would apply to every ward, although it may not record anything in your particular ward.
Yeah, there are a significant number of diffusion tubes and monitoring stations around the city which will which give the totality of the picture, and we report those annually back to DEFRA.
Is that okay?
Thanks. I didn't really intend this to open up into a wider conversation on the air quality action plan. I was just looking at an understanding. But certainly during the pandemic, when we were getting regular figures from Paul Darlow, it was very noticeable that the traffic count on the Eastern Road and the M275 dropped significantly to something in the region somewhere between 50 and 65% of norm. And yet it was interesting that Copner Road and the spine of the city was very much as you were. It was almost 100% all the way through. So it would be interesting. I mean, I understand the clean air zone is just one facet of what we're talking about, but it would be interesting to have a better understanding of air quality in other areas of the city rather than the focus, because the law of unintended consequences was easily demonstrated during the pandemic.
But we have to have the tubes in place to monitor. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Graham.
Thank you, Lynn. I had a couple of questions about the sort of how implementation plan and budgets meld together. I noticed, for example, in 4.5, it says the plan has 3 schemes which Portsmouth City Council has a statutory duty to deliver. Access to people with disabilities, travel line and rights of way, and as such are not subject to prioritisation. So therefore, they have to be funded out of the £943,000. What sort of what's the element of that comes out of the 943 to cover those 3 things? What are we anticipating spending on those, on travel line rights of way and access to people with disabilities? Because it says we've got to do them. Have we got a figure, or are we just saying they will take the top priority whatever happens?
Do you have a figure?
Sorry if I take that. Yeah, there is a figure. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's not a significant proportion of the total. But we can provide you with that after this meeting. I just don't have the schedule on me. You got it. If you give us 5 minutes, we'll probably be able to find it for you.
Anything else, Graham?
Yeah, there is another question I have, really. I'm sort of following up on what Simon said, actually, because clearly these are broader headings for topics. And, for example, I asked last time about the local cycling walking infrastructure plan and about the 3-year projects that said were fairly easy to do, and did we have enough money to do them? And I think the answer was no. We didn't have a certainty that we could do all of those within the 3 years. I think if I remember the answer correctly.
I think you're probably right
I
there.
think you're probably right, yeah.
Who's going to answer that? Probably Michelle. Yes? Is it Michelle?
Yeah, I can provide a response when Councillor Heaney's ready.
Yeah, I just want to ask my sort of preamble.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
the current plan is for 2 years of funding, because the plan goes for 24-25. So we could presumably do 2 years worth of the 3 years of the LC whip. And what I would like to know is what's the prioritisation within that in terms of those schemes that we identified as 0 to 3. It would be useful to know, because people might ask questions about, well, what's happening? And I have no idea which ones are prioritised. So it'd be really helpful if you have already got it to say, well, these are going to happen, but this was in year 3 and it ain't going to happen until year 3 or after.
Michelle.
Thank you, Councillor Stagg. So the LC Whip is included in this year's LTP list of schemes. From memory, there's £100,000 allocated to it. Obviously, the LC Whip document itself, as you say, as you correctly say, it lists short, medium and long-term schemes. So obviously this is the approval of the implementation plan as a whole, and then it would be the intention to go through that list of the short-term schemes and look at where we could complete one that would provide the greatest network connectivity, but we would bring that back to a future T&T meeting for further discussion under a separate report.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's okay. And I suppose the other one that I was going to ask about was the casualty and speed reduction measures, because I did ask for some information about this back at the beginning of February about what the sort of list looked like in terms of how many schemes and what the scales are. And I'd be really interested to know, I still would be interested to know what that information, because I haven't received it yet, anything at all about that, just to get a sense of how much there is in the pipeline and how much we can actually realistically do. So is there the same issue with, there's only a limited amount of funding going to that casualty and speed reduction measure, and have we agreed what that amount is yet? And can I have the information that I asked for back at the beginning of February on the schemes that are in the pipeline?
Michelle.
So the casualty and speed reduction measures budget for 21-22 came to TNT, I believe, in December or January. So that will be the that's what's in the pipeline, because that was agreed at this committee in a previous meeting. For this coming year's budget, I believe the budget is between £100,000 and £150,000. The criteria that we use is that if there are any recommendations from coroner's reports related to the fatalities that we've had in the city, they will always take priority. After that, the next stage of priority would be the highest casualty sites and the sites where we have the greatest incidences of vehicle speeding. So the V85 speed, which is the speed at which 85% or more of the drivers travel. So again, the implementation plan to get approval for the overall schemes is coming today, and we would bring back the 22-23 speed reductions budget to this committee with the exact detail of what we're intending to do this financial year later in the year.
Okay.
I think one of the things to remember is that with transport, so much of it depends on successful bids for money for outside. There's not a tremendous amount of money that's actually put in. I mean, even the LTP money is not ring-fenced. And so what the officers are trying to do is to have what Martin Lavers calls shovel-ready schemes, have the outline schemes, so that when there's the opportunity then to apply for funding, so that's where the prioritisation of the things comes in. If they know that we want to do this bit next, we get the schemes drafted up, if you like, and then ready to apply for funding. And that's probably the main reason why the team have been so successful in getting funding in the last year. I think I'm right in saying this, am I not? Pam is nodding wisely, so there we are. Thank you.
That's fine, but I have asked for information about this, but I haven't received it, and I have asked back in February for information on this, and I haven't had a response. But we'll leave it there for the moment.
Anything else, Graham? No? Okay. Anything else from you, Simon? Okay, going through the recommendations. The attached LTP for funded schemes is adopted as part of the Portsmouth LTP for implementation plan. The authority is delegated to the Director of Regeneration. Yes, I'm accepting that. The Director of Regeneration consultation with the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation, and to update the local transport plan for implementation plan with the attached proposed local transport plan funded scheme list in Appendix A, which I accept, because obviously things will change, so they may have to be amended. Thirdly, authority is delegated to the Director of Regeneration consultation with the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation and the Section 151 officer to agree any minor amendments to the implementation plan that may be required to take account of future funding changes and relevant national policy guidance. So in other words, it's a dynamic situation. So yes, agree with that. Notes that the funded infrastructure programme, Transport Hub funding and other revenue and externally funded highways and transport work programmes contribute to the delivery of the LTP4 and the implementation plan will be updated to include these. The process for monitoring, and that is very important, that's something that officers have been working on recently in the process of governance of LTP4 noted. So I accept all of those. I think it's a really good, it's a really good plan. It's a good strategy and a good plan. So pleased with that, very pleased. Right. Agenda item 4, which I think is the rental e-scooters. Can I, I think you're going to deliver this, aren't you again, Hayley? Can I just say beforehand, I had a quick meeting just before I came here with the CEO of Voi, because we were concerned when we found out that there were some Russian shareholders, and obviously we didn't want to be seen to be supporting a regime that has done what it's done. And I think we're quite satisfied. We had input on, when was it, Tuesday, in the briefing from Voi. We were disappointed that they didn't actually let us know. They knew about this quite a while ago, and they didn't let us know. And we found out, I think it was a phone call from the Financial Times, or the times, which was a bit disappointing. So it took us a bit by surprise. Anyway, what they are doing, and I made a note of all things. There's an email coming around to all councils, because I said in Tuesday's meeting that as soon as we got information, it would go out to all councillors. They have stopped transporting scooters through Russia by train because they're made in China, and instead they're shipping them to Europe from China and bypassing Russia. They're selling their minority shares that they have in a Russian micromobility company. They've stopped selling old reconditioned e-scooters to Russia. They've confirmed that none of the Russian shareholders are on the banned list, but what they have said to them is that VOI expects them to either verbally disassociate themselves with what Russia has done, Putin has done, but they appreciate that many of them are still living in Russia, and therefore they could have a lot of problems. So they've said they have to get rid of their shares. And they're analysing all of their shareholders, even the smallest ones, to see, where they come from, and the same rules will apply to them. And finally, the scooters between 12 and 1 o'clock every day are going to have yellow and blue lights on them, and the money that comes from hiring those scooters in that hour every day goes to the relief efforts for Ukraine. So I think they're doing everything they possibly can. They were on it very, very quickly as soon as they realised. It's just a pity they didn't tell us as quickly, but there we are. I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions about that? No? No? Okay. So, Hayley, can you present the report, please? Thank you.
Thanks. So the recommendations of this report are that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation notes the information contained within the report on the rental e-scooter trial to date, approves the renewal of the Vehicle Special Order VSO for Portsmouth's e-scooter rental scheme to 30th of November 2022 in accordance with the Department for Transport's new end date to legally enable the rental e-scooter trial to extend beyond its scheduled end date of 31st of March 2022, and notes that Portsmouth's corresponding experimental traffic regulation order to allow rental e-scooters in cycle tracks, cycle lanes and bus lanes is due to expire on the 15th of September 2022, and that a further Cabinet Member decision will therefore be required in due course for the e-scooter rental scheme to effectively operate beyond that date. The report includes key statistics from the first year of operation and details results of the third survey undertaken. The reasons for the recommendations are that the trial has enabled e-scooters to be introduced in a controlled and safe manner, from which we can provide evidence as to their suitability as a transport mode in Portsmouth. This evidence will inform the DFT's evaluation process as it considers whether to legalise e-scooters for the longer term following the trials. The trial supports the ambitions of Portsmouth's adopted transport strategy, particularly Policy C, and the Council's most recent survey indicated that 60% of ROI e-scooter trips would have otherwise been made by car or taxi. After just 11 months, and while some parts of the city are not yet well served by e-scooter availability, it's conservatively estimated that the trial has removed more than 100,000 car trips from Portsmouth roads and 62 tonnes of CO2 equivalent from the atmosphere. In terms of local air quality, the trial has already reduced PM 2.5 particulate emissions by 9.86 kilograms. Extending the trial will provide more data and help ensure fluctuations caused by weather, major events, availability in residential areas and returning users are as fully accounted for as possible during the trial period. Extending the trial will allow further evidence collection during a period of reopening following the COVID-19 lockdowns, which is more representative of how people are likely to travel around the city in the future. Extending the trial will help facilitate e-scooter integration into wider future transport zone programme schemes, including bike share, mobility as a service and freight micro-consolidation options. It's currently anticipated that mobility as a service will be launched this spring and bike share this summer. Ending the trial in March 2022 could slow progress towards micro-mobility achieving its true potential in Portsmouth, as it would remove the opportunity to continue refining the service, including its integration with bike share and MAS, while the DFT continues to evaluate the trials, establish the best legal framework, if any, for legalising e-scooters in the future. Extending the trial would facilitate the ongoing independent data validation commissioned by Solent Transport, which would improve the evidence base and help inform subsequent decisions to be taken about e-scooters at local and national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayley. Councillor Heaney, any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Just wanted to ask a question about the extending the TRO, experimental TRO. I presume is that just a timing issue in that we couldn't get it done today because obviously it doesn't expire till September. I'm assuming you might bring it forward in June or July. Is that the intention?
Kevin? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, experimental traffic regulation orders run for 18 months. So R1, because the trial started in March, R1 expires in September. So the plan will be that we'll bring a report back in the summer in advance of that to find a way forward with a permanent TRO or whatever the answer may be to allow the trial to continue at that point.
Oh, so we can't just extend it for 3 months?
I don't know, what are the rules about ETROs? You can stop them before the end of 18 months, can't you? But they can't go beyond 18 months.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay.
We'll come back to that one later.
Anything else?
Do you have further questions? Yeah. I was looking at the accident statistics here, and obviously the overall number seems quite large, but it does appear that quite a few of them are what we could describe as damage only or slight. Damage only, do we know if that's damage by riders, i.e. because they've had a collision or they've bumped the pavement or whatever, or are we getting any vandalism of the ones left in the parks? Because I do wonder whether people are trying to nick batteries or things if they're in them.
Gareth?
Do we know?
Yeah, I can tell you that the most common damage only among those 79 is actually to mobile phones, which I just saw that the new scooter that they've released has a better mobile phone holder to sort of reduce that. So I don't think it's down so much to vandalism. I'd need to look through all the figures to give you a number for vandalism, but it's mostly the sort of more minor things such as a mobile phone being dropped while scooting.
Right, so it's not damage to the scooter, it's damage to the mobile phone. The serious accidents one obviously is the one I was looking at, and I get the impression from the report that we don't really know enough about the detail of those to be able to make any strong conclusions, because you're talking about
It's my
obtaining
main
information
bone
of
of
police, etc.
contention. I keep asking them for clarification. Gareth,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, sure. So Solent Transport have got a piece of work which is ongoing to try to get a better grasp of exactly how many serious and slight injury accidents there are. So the numbers that are reported, just as in the last extension decision that you had, they're the ones that are reported by users to VOI, and then VOI report them onto us. So VOI, as they're required to do, and as all the scooter operators are required to do, they try to use the Department for Transport definitions, but of course they are themselves open somewhat to interpretation. So for the list of serious accidents, those 19 that are mentioned, some of them we would suggest could have been put in the slight category. They're certainly at the lower end of serious. But beyond that, you can see that there's about 100 slight and serious accidents together, overwhelmingly slight, 78 slight and then 19 serious. And then data that we've got from the Hampshire Police for the same period suggests that there's potentially about a tenth of that's actually police recorded injuries. It's in the region of 10 versus the 100 on the scooter operators. But even that isn't reliable, because that is data which has not yet gone through the validation system before being put on the National Accident Database. And that National Accident Database doesn't actually have e-scooter as a category, so it makes it very hard at the moment to draw comparisons with other modes in terms of accident rates. But what we're hoping is that by the time we come back with that future decision to be made, is that again we'll have more and better information to help inform the ongoing decisions around that.
I suppose the reason why it's important is we want to try and identify whether things that can actually be done to reduce the accident levels, or whether it's something that is due to human error, which we can't do anything about. And I suppose that's the question: is it something that we can do something about, or is it just pure human error that we can't? So, if we can get some information about that, that would be really, really helpful. I asked my colleagues actually if they had any questions or observations on this, because I knew the report was coming up, so I sent a copy to them. I copied them on Monday about this, and I've had two of my colleagues come back and ask some questions. So I'll do it on their behalf because they're not here, and they sent me their replies. One of my colleagues, Councillor Coles, he uses it regularly, but he said when there is misuse, he said, you can report directly to VOI. He said, however, I found this to be difficult to locate on the VOI website, and I haven't found a link on the council website. So he's basically saying if you see somebody misbehaving, which you can report, he says it's quite difficult to locate on the VOI website where you do that, and also there doesn't appear to be anything on the council website which you can do that. So he made that observation. My colleague, Councillor Gerardo, also raised the issue about what could be done to make the public aware of the ability to report dangerous scooting. Now, I recognise that obviously this is not only boy scooters, but and private ones as well, but of course my colleagues do know, and I always tell people make sure you look for the number if you can, even part of the number. But it's a bit of a problem. But those are the two comments that I got back about the reporting of incidents. So I just wanted to, because we have raised this before, and I don't know how much further forward we are in getting the ability of VOI to be able to allow the public to report those concerns when they have them, and whether in fact the council will in fact forward those if we have a facility for doing that.
We do keep asking, well I keep asking for more detailed information, and it's not that forthcoming, I must admit. I don't know that they're hiding anything, but I don't think it's in their system. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. What do you think, Gareth?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, I like Councillor Stagg, I feel like a broken record, because I think I was asked this last time as well. We are disappointed that at the moment the publicly reported incidents aren't being fed into the kind of the overall data set. But all I do is reiterate, what I said last time, which is that when we do get those, because they do provide them manually when we ask, it is a small fraction of the number that's actually been reported by the VOI ambassadors. It's sort of a handful a month at most. So I think the bigger issue is what I think what you mentioned about actually making sure that the members of the public know the best way to report it. It's not that VOI is sitting on a lot of these reports and we're not having them shared with us. So we're certainly always looking to find better ways to communicate. It is on the website, but I think we need to always find better ways to try to get that information out there. So always open to suggestions on that as well. Thank you.
Well, I wonder if it's impossible for us to have a facility to feed these inquiries through if we get them, say, through the help desk or whatever, or people don't know who to contact in VOI because they don't know where to find them. Obviously, we've got to be clear that when they're being asked about it, it is a VOI scooter, because they may misunderstand it, but it would be helpful if we could do that.
Is it report@voi.com? It's quite simple actually to do.
Yeah. Okay, well,
but I don't know that is out. Is it out in general public? It is.
Yeah, it's on their website. I don't know if it's actually report@voi.com, but if you go onto a search engine of your choice and type in report@voi, then it will certainly take you there, or you can go on the VOI website and it's easily signposted. They did update it quite recently, so it may be that colleagues that have raised that has been a bit difficult to find. If they go back now, it might be a little bit clearer. I hope so.
Well, one thing I've been asking them for is how many of the reports are coming from the public as opposed to their ambassadors, because quite a few people have said they get a standard letter, or email back, and we're still pressing for that, aren't we? Because I don't know if they act on it, because they have got quite a good system that if you're caught doing something which you shouldn't be doing, like running on the pavement, by ambassadors, you get banned for 7 days. If you're caught a second time, you're banned for, I think it's 28 days or 30 days. And if you're caught a third time, you're banned for life. But I don't know how many of the ones that are reported by the public are included in that, and that's the information we're trying to get out to them.
I mean, there is information about how many people have been penalised for misuse, and it's a relatively small number, but yeah. There is one other thing I would say. Stephen Morgan, the MP, said that voice code is a bit like Marmite, you either love them or you hate them. And the issue of the private ones is still quite an issue. We get lots of comments about it. And I have to say that last Friday, I was leaving the civic offices and I saw somebody leaving the underground car park with a scooter that was not a voice scooter. They were wearing a bib, a high-vis bib, which was very nice, but they clearly brought it into work, left it in the underground car park, and then left on Friday afternoon from work riding a non-legal
That's where the government
e-scooter.
needs to come in and enforce.
We might need to remind staff that this is not something they should be doing.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Bosher.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah. We also report vehicles that are speeding around with Portsmouth City Council logos on them. It depends how close you go and how deep you go into it, I guess. I mean, I mean, I've been a supporter of this from day one. I think it's the right thing to do, and extending the scheme is the right thing to do because you're going to get it for another summer month period of time. So I think we're looking at it the right way. I've got a couple of questions which in the key statistics, and the majority of those there are voice statistics. They're easily collectible. But litres of gasoline not burnt, well, I'm sure that's an Americanism there in the first instance, but how on earth do they work it right out down to the last single litre? That's the first one I've got. And I'll give you an example, because I've used the scooters a couple of times, but actually I've used them on the seafront. So I've actually driven down to the seafront to use a scooter, and I wouldn't argue that I've actually saved much in the way of gasoline, shall we say, when I've actually used it. And I would imagine that the majority of the scooters that are actually used are probably in that seafront area, particularly when the weather's nice. And I would imagine that quite a few people have used public transport, taxis, or their own vehicles to get down there to use them in the first place. So I'm trying to get my brain around how they've actually worked that figure out, because I think there's a degree of irrelevance there. I think they're trying to claim something there that can't actually be proved.
You know, I always welcome questions about the sort of the environmental impact of the scheme. I think, you know, it's one of the most important indicators as to whether it's a success or not. The litres of gasoline not burned, I think I already mentioned to them that they might want to sort of reduce the Americanisms in that, but in terms of the more substantive point about its accuracy, I think, and I haven't looked at that specific measure as closely as I've looked at the carbon dioxide equivalent saved one, but I think it's coming from the same thing, which is mode shift. Right? They use their surveys, their summer survey, which had, from memory, I think it was 43% or thereabouts mode shift from car or taxi, mostly from car, some from taxi. And that then our subsequent survey that we did late summer, Portsmouth City Council had a higher mode shift. It was, came out at 56% with a bigger sample size. More recently, you'll know it's in the appendices that our most recent survey, the winter one, had a mode shift figure of 60% in Portsmouth, which was also with a good sample size, and that's, you know, fantastic and kind of reinforced that the earlier survey wasn't a fluke. Now, we also know, just this week, we were told the sort of the headline findings, or a couple of sneak preview of the headline findings from Voi's latest survey, which again does show that mode shift going up slightly. So we'll be able to share that very, very soon. So I think that while, of course, there are trips that are made, which could have been made by bus or walks or so forth, what we're finding in Portsmouth, which is part of what's contributing to those really encouraging figures, is that there are a lot of people who would have driven or been in a car and are now on an e-scooter. So that is the overriding reason for that. Thank you.
I mean, I don't doubt that there is a saving on fuel and a saving on trips replaced. It's just that the figures are so accurate that you look at it and you think that accuracy is probably not a true reflection of it, where arguably all the other indicators other than trips replaced and petrol not burnt would arguably be something that can be easily calculated through VOI. One of the things that I've noticed with the scooters, and we've got 2 or 3 parks up in Drayton Farlington where I am, is that what started out with the rack system, where the scooters were all neatly kept in the racks and whatever, that practice seems to have deteriorated a little bit, and it seems to be anywhere within 20 feet of the rack would seem to be okay in that respect. And perhaps the case in point that we've got one in Drayton that's next to the chip shop, effectively, on an area of grounds where we would normally put the Christmas tree. And that is now strewn with scooters that you have to walk or pick your way through. I think there's been a deterioration, perhaps, in the way VOI are monitoring how these scooters are actually racked in the first instance, which I think needs to up their game a little bit in that respect. I take the point about reporting it. It would appear to be pretty difficult. It's not user-friendly to do. And I've got a VOI account, and while Councillor Heaney was talking, I've just gone in there under help and said, what problem do you see or experience? And I put report in there. And it's, I want to report a billing issue, I want to report a wrongly parked scooter, I want to report an issue with a scooter. There's no means in there that gives you the opportunity through their app to even report it. And maybe, and I don't know how easy it is that we've got a very good My Portsmouth app with Report It on there that probably a lot of people do have. I certainly have it, and I know a lot of people in my area use that and for Report It, because you can report all sorts of things in there. People have the perception that it's not VOI scooters, it's Portsmouth City Council. And it might be that there is an opportunity through the My Portsmouth app to have a reporting function, because I would suspect that more people are going to have that on their phone rather than a VOI scooter one, or indeed having to go into a search engine and type everything out. They're not going to get a true reflection on the statistics unless it's a serious incident, because in reality people are not going to report something minor if it's going to take them 10 minutes to actually do something. They're just going to brush over it and move on.
But that's something we could probably take up with VOI, because...
I don't know how easy it is to do it in the My Portsmouth app, but as I said, a lot of people do use that because there's a myriad of stuff under Report It, and it might be that we could actually build it into that, because that app has certainly grown.
It may just be in particular areas, the outliers. I mean, because you are on the sort of the outback of Portsmouth, aren't you, in Drayton?
I'm not an app developer, sadly.
No, but what I mean is whether the ambassadors go there often enough when they're the far-flung ones. It's something we could ask, because all the ones I see around Portsmouth, they're all very well parked. And in fact, the information we got, I think, on Tuesday was 98% parking compliant. But it may be that those ones which are further out are not being visited by ambassadors, so that's something we could.
I know you have to, when you return it, you have to take a picture of it and do all the other bits to make sure so that you can tick their boxes to say you've done it. But of course, these are not manned as such, And so you don't know who is coming along as a pedestrian and having a look and moving them around all over the place. And it's been subsequently moved by others, shall we say. And some of these are in quite narrow places. There's another one at the top of the Eastern Road, Havant Road Junction. And actually, there's not a great deal of pavement there. So if they're not particularly parked very well, then that particular junction on that area of pavement is not pedestrian friendly because of it. And that's probably where my concern is perhaps are we looking at getting a geographical spread and not necessarily thinking are they actually in the appropriate location where you actually want to put it because they're going to interfere with pedestrians. And that junction is actually also a cycleway as well, on the pavement cycleway. So I don't know whether some of these things are actively looked at.
Well, that's something we'll definitely pick up with them. And any other
yes, I mean, I heard what you said about Voy at the beginning with the email. It would be nice to have seen sight of that email beforehand because I haven't. Because notwithstanding...
No, I haven't sent it out yet because it's only just been finished.
Yeah, because it's been reported in other areas. I think Liverpool's an area, Bristol is an area where this concern has already been echoed over the past sort of 10 days. So I share the disappointment that Voy should have been a little bit more proactive with some of the other cities that they've actually got to engage them and let them know.
But don't forget, we're in this with Solent Transport. It's not just us, it's us and Southampton. So there has to be agreement on what's going out from Solent Transport. So that's probably held it up a little bit.
Yeah, it would. But with the best in the world, what's happening in the Ukraine, we can't wait for the bureaucracy at Solent Transport in these sorts of situations because members have questions. If you separate the electric scooter trial from Voy, I'm totally supportive of the electric scooter trial. My concerns still centre around the Russian shareholder involvement, and I know you said that they are not currently on the sanctioned list, but what would happen to this trial if they suddenly became a member of the sanctioned list? And are we totally satisfied that that the Russian connection isn't what we think it is?
Well, I think the Voy have made it quite clear that they don't want them as shareholders. So either they verbally, they've given the option of verbally disassociating themselves from what Putin has done and the invasion, etc., or they have to sell their shares or get rid of their shares. It's as simple as that. I think the CEO said that the shares are being passed over to him, and that's already happening. So passed over to him as CEO, not him personally, but in his role as CEO. So I think they're removing those shareholders.
I think from what you've said, Lynn, and I'm not being disingenuous, but there was an awful lot of I think, I'm guessing, and I'm whatever there. What would be useful, notwithstanding what you want to do here, is that we had some sort of statement out of Voy or something like that that had total clarity against it. Otherwise, we could find ourselves in a situation where we've extended a trial for 6 months that has Russian investment and potentially someone on the sanction list. And I'm looking at the damage limitation that we actually need, particularly as we've had the situation with Gazprom, and we had an all-member briefing about it today on what was involved there. I think this is very much a lesser one than Gazprom, but it needs to be treated with equal seriousness as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, which is why we've chased them up all the way along the line as soon as we knew about it, which was on Wednesday, I think, wasn't it? Yes. And I think they're going to put out a statement. I'm not 100% certain about that, but I mean, I'd asked to speak to somebody, and this is why I had it was only a quick meeting, less than 10 minutes with the CEO, and I asked him all the relevant questions, and I think that they're still investigating because they said, as he said, they're going through all their shareholders to see if there's any links with anybody else with the Russians, and it's the same rules apply to them. So they don't want the Russians involved at all, and they've made that quite clear. I mean, they've got their own reputation to consider as well, because they're a worldwide company. I don't know if, have you heard any more, Gareth, than what I've heard?
The only things that I would add is that I know that Voi are putting a statement out. They're obviously out of a sort of concern around the safety of named individuals, just being careful about the wording, but that will be going out hopefully today. And the only other thing is just really to reinforce something that Councillor Stagg just said, which is that they've made clear that aside from their own sort of organisational sort of moral imperative to be doing the right thing, which seems sincere, the overriding concerns of their users, their customers, would be on the side of Ukraine in this as well, and that they want to be very much be seen to be doing the right thing by their customers in the cities around the world. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Could I ask, Lynn, I mean, obviously it's not related to the decision you've got to make, but when we get that statement from Voi, that it is circulated to all members of the City Council,
Absolutely,
so that there is complete clarity?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Right, Graham. I'm just conscious of time, and we've got quite a few to go
ask
through.
one question from my colleague Tom, who was saying that he was concerned about the lack of racks in the North End shops. He said the nearest one is 5 to 10 minute walk away next to the Port multi-storey, and the other opposite the Mother Shipton in Stamshaw. And I wondered if there was any likelihood of extra racks in the North End area.
Are there 15 more racks going in, Gareth?
So we're about, I think we've still got almost 2 weeks to go on the consultation period for those 15 racks. One would expect that most of them will go in, but of course we'll, once the consultation period is closed, we'll pull together any concerns that have been raised and have a close look at them before making recommendations about which ones to take forward to installation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, on the basis that we are going to publish any statement from Voi, I'm more than happy to go ahead with agreeing to the extension of the trial, because if we get some decent data through that can then be applied to the private scooters, we could be in an advantageous position. But I think on the basis that if anything untoward happens, we have got the ability to pull out. And I think, contractually, I don't know the legal bit about this, but what do you think, Hayley?
Yeah, we've taken advice from our legal team, and I think if anyone becomes on the sanction list, then that will give us break clauses, as far as I understand.
I think that should satisfy the majority of people. So I'm happy to go along with the recommendations. Right, agenda item 5, the third, the third paper. And that, I think, is it's you, Kevin, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Councillor Stagg. This report reports on the consultation on TRO 102, which had a number of proposals, 2 of which received comments from the public and objections. The first area to receive an objection was a proposal for 21 metres of double yellow line across the entrance to an area of private parking on Althorp Drive. The objection is about the loss of parking that the double yellow lines would introduce. There was one representation also in favour of the proposal, and I think the concern and the reason it was proposed to have double yellow line was that cars parking up to the entrance block the sight lines. So we're recommending that that's implemented. The second area which received an objection was a proposal to extend the times of a loading bay in Chasewater Avenue from 9 a.m. which currently has 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and extend that to 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So from a 2-hour window to a 4-hour window for the deliveries, because it is quite hard to organise deliveries that go around a large area into a 2-hour window. There's objections from 2 people, and they seem to centre more on the fact that they don't think it's an appropriate place for delivery vehicles. The problem that's happening at the moment is if delivery vehicles arrive outside that window, there is nowhere for them to pull in, and they block the road. So we're recommending extending that, and correspondingly that reduces the time that limited waiting parking is available in that parking place. So that's our recommendation.
Thank you, Karen. Simon.
I'm not personally totally familiar with the areas that we're actually talking about, so it's difficult to comment. But I think when we had our briefing, I talked in terms of the loading bay and extending it by a couple of hours. It certainly makes logical sense to actually do that. As I said beforehand, certainly from a benefit, if I look at areas in Drayton and Farlington, the vehicles that are delivering to primarily Tesco's up there, but it's the same sort of principle. They're doing trips to a variety of destinations, not just one and back to the depot, and it only takes a traffic delay, an accident, or something of that sort of nature, and they've missed that loading bay, and I would they would fall foul of that. So it makes sense to extend it by a couple of hours so that you've got something that people understand.
Thank you. Graham?
Yeah, I mean, I do know the one in Chasewater because it's not too far from where I live. I walk past it and I know what the problem is if the lorries don't have that to park in, so I can see the logic for that. I don't know the Althorpe Road one. We appear to have had no representation from ward councils as such, and I think therefore the recommendation, I would be happy to go along with it. I wasn't able to attend the briefing due to work commitments, but yeah, I'm happy to go. I have no problem with them.
Thank you. Yes, well, I'm happy to agree, both of those. Thank you, Karen. Next item. Oh, it's you again, Hayley. It's the taxi ranks on London Road North End.
Thank you. So the recommendations of this report are that an experimental traffic regulation order is undertaken for a 22-hour, 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. 2-car taxi rank located at the southern end of the southbound bus lane on London Road, close to the junction with Laburnum Grove. An information report be taken to Licensing Committee outlining the outcome of this decision, and a report be brought back to the Cabinet Member of Traffic and Transportation with the results of the trial before the end of the ETRO period. So in September 2020, a review of taxi ranks went to Licensing Committee and included a proposal for a 24-hour rank in this location on London Road. Following this proposal, work has been underway to examine the technical viability of this location, including but not limited to site visits, safety reviews and stakeholder engagement. During engagement, the bus operators highlighted the importance in utilising the bus lane to pass traffic queuing in the main carriageway to turn right into Derby Road, particularly during the morning peak period. Following review and engagement, a report was presented to Licensing Committee in December 2021, which outlined safety concerns regarding the locations and analysis of vehicle movements, demonstrating that only a maximum of 2 vehicles could be accommodated in a rank at this location. The safety concerns identified were that London Road is the highest casualty route in Portsmouth and also the highest cycle casualty route in the city. There have been 3 personal injury collisions at this junction in the 3-year period from the 1st of February 2018 to the 31st of January 2021. The first is a car turning right from Laburnum Grove onto London Road, colliding with a pedestrian crossing the road. Second is a taxi turning left onto Laburnum Grove from London Road, colliding with a pedal cyclist travelling southbound on the near side. And the third being a car turning left into London Road from Derby Road, colliding with a pedestrian crossing Derby Road. And then buses exiting the bus lane past ranking vehicles would need wide turning movements and could cause northbound traffic to realign their path, in turn risking safety of cycle lane users and also potentially pedestrians crossing Derby Road. Cyclists and rental e-scooters also use the bus lanes, therefore any changes would also need to consider the actual and perceived safety of these users, who would have to navigate around stationary vehicles into live traffic at a point where general traffic would not expect them to. This may also add the risk of taxi car doors opening onto them and make them vulnerable to taxis and buses pulling out. The presence of stationary taxis would reduce visibility for vehicles joining London Road from Laburnum Grove. And the presence of stationary vehicles would also reduce visibility for pedestrians crossing the junction of Leburn and Grove to see traffic turning into the road. This road would need to be crossed for any passengers arriving at the rank from the south. At Licensing Committee in December 2021, it was agreed that following these concerns, an independent road safety audit be undertaken. This has now been completed in early 2022, as appended, and did not outline any safety concerns with the proposed taxi rank. It's recognised that this is an important location for the taxi trade to have a taxi rank, particularly following the removal of the Derby Road taxi rank. Alternative locations have been investigated, but no feasible alternatives have been identified, and the engagement with the trade outlines the proposal as the preferred location. It's therefore proposed that a 22-hour two-car rank be taken forward through an ETRO, which can be accompanied by close monitoring. It should also be noted that the existing 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. evening four-car rank will remain in situ during this trial. The reasons for recommendations are that it's acknowledged as an important location to be served by a daytime taxi rank. By implementing the rank on a trial basis, we will be able to closely monitor how the rank operates and interact with the surrounding traffic network, including any safety issues which arise, any delays to bus services, any conflict between the rank and bus lane use, e.g. through overranking, and through stakeholder feedback. The area close to London Road, Somerton Avenue roundabout is known to have a casualty issue, and with this trial in place for up to 18 months, we can ensure that any wider schemes being brought forward for the area consider permanent changes to the taxi rank within the designs. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayley. I think it's a sensible move, and I personally think that the 22-hour rather than the 24-hour is the right thing, because that road is a very busy road between 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock with buses, and let's face it, it's bus lanes, and they really need to have priority. So I think it's a happy compromise. That's my personal view. I think that taxis do need somewhere there, because it's having removed the one from Derby Road, but I think it's a happy compromise. But that's just my personal view. Councillor Heaney.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the two together, they obviously have two different timings. One comes from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., so it's an overnight taxi rank, effectively, and the one in the new added one, is going to be for a much longer period. And is it a direct replacement for what was in Derby Road in respect to the number of taxis that could be accommodated in the timings?
Hayley? Did you hear that question?
Yeah, I believe Derby Road did have more than two cars, but the
I think it was
path,
4, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 4. The swept path analysis shows that we cannot accommodate more than 2 at the end of the bus lane and allow the buses to exit after the Derby Road junction.
Oh, I see, because I was looking at that sort of patch in the middle there between the two ranks. What sort of parking is there? There's no parking there, presumably. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's just bus lane.
So the concern is buses coming out of Derby Road and going south would be turning towards the taxi rank. Is that the concern that you were saying about?
The bus operator's concern is that buses travelling southbound along London Road, if they had to exit the bus lane before they passed the Derby Road junction, they would get stuck in the queue of traffic waiting to turn right into Derby Road.
It's other traffic going south along London Road, turning right into Derby Road that could block the buses.
So what would happen is buses would be able to use the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. taxi rank side to get it to effectively avoid a queuing traffic that's going into Derby Road going south.
But that's why it's located where it is,
Yeah, so that's
and why it's not available for the taxi route between 7 and 9, which is when most of the buses are going down.
So the idea is that will be completely free between 7 and 9.
Yes.
But other times they may have to wait and queue.
But it's never that busy later, not as busy as between 7 and 9. Let's face it, that is the peak time, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about that. Having driven down that road at different times of the day, it can be quite busy at all times of the day. I suppose because this is an experimental TRO, it will give us a chance to test this out and see what the actual impact is. I suppose that is.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
So
yes.
if it does cause a problem for the buses,
Yes.
we will become aware of it.
And
So-
the bus drivers will let us know.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. Yeah, okay.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
that's
you.
all I wanted to ask, really.
Yeah, fine. Simon?
Thanks, Lynn. I get the logic for the 22 hours rather than the 24, in so much you want to keep the traffic flowing. But it originally sort of filled me with a degree of concern because of the accident statistics that we actually have there, that we're actually introducing what is essentially parking in a bus lane in that respect. But I guess if there isn't any demand for taxis there, then the taxis aren't going to be parking there in the first place. If they're not going to get any fares, I suppose is the moot point. Because I'm also minded the fact that if you roll it back up to Hillsey, Portsbridge area, we're spending an awful lot of somebody else's money improving the bus flow in there and putting traffic lights there to get some extra time. And you sort of look at it and you think, well, if we're going to gain more time there, we're actually going to lose what we've gained with all that if we've got the buses gummed up at Derby Road. But I guess I come back to the fact that it is an experimental traffic order and it needs to be monitored to see that it's going to work. I would like to think, and it probably will happen, is that it is actually policed to make sure that it is not abused. And the fact that there aren't taxis parked there between 7 and 9 in the morning and it's used appropriately. Otherwise, my view would be if it's going to be misused and it's going to be cause traffic issues, then get rid of it. But I guess let's see how the experimental traffic order goes and see what the feedback is, because it'll end up coming back here. And if it's going to become a TRO, it'll have to go out to consultation anyway, won't it?
Kevin, will there be ANPR cameras around to monitor?
I don't think there was an intention to put in a camera there, but if somebody stops in a bus lane, the CEOs can deal with it. So if the taxis were stopped at a time, as Councillor Bosch is suggesting, outside the time that they're meant to, then the CEOs could take action.
But aren't there mobile ANPR cameras?
No, not that we can.
Right, okay.
Do we not have any, Lynn, do we not have any cameras there at all in that particular stretch? I'm sort of looking at Stubbington Avenue down to sort of Laburnum Grove type area anyway. Because, I mean, it's not an area that I drive through frequently, but the northbound side where that pub and the kebab house is and all that, there always seems to be vehicles parked there under the guise that they're unloading or loading at any time of day, and it seems to be a common place to actually stop. And the bottom line is that any taxis that are coming southbound and those and whoever their passengers are want to be dropped in that area are probably going to pull into that southbound bus lane to drop off people anyway, I would have thought.
They also stop there to go to the ATMs.
Oh yes, there is one, one or two there as well, don't they?
Yes.
I mean, it might be worth if we haven't got cameras there in doing a bit of work with the CEOs once it goes in to make sure that it isn't being abused and we have some proper. I use the phrase policing, but it is properly monitored, so we've got some pretty good idea because certainly. When it comes back, if it's still me, then I'd be looking at the abuse times outside, in that 7 to 9 period and whatever, and that's the sort of data that I'll be looking to see whether it's being used appropriately or whether it's not.
Is there any location we could consider for a camera?
Yes, I think it'd be wise.
And that might come out.
We'd have to sit nicely to Wayne for money. I've underlined it's an experimental traffic regulation order, so it can be pulled if it doesn't work, then it's removed, and it's It's not just taxi drivers, is it, but other people as well. So, yes, I'm happy to agree it, and that it, the information obviously has to be taken to the licensing committee, and then we have a report back. Have we set a date for that before the end of the ETRO? Well, that's 18 months, isn't it? I think we need to set an earlier date than that. But that's something we can perhaps work out outside of this meeting. Yes, yeah. So I'm happy for that. Thank you. Next one. And, oh, guess what? It's Hayley again. Update on the rapid electric EV charging points.
Thank you. This report is an information report which provides an update on the installation of electric vehicle charge points for taxis and private hire vehicles following approval at Cabinet in November 2021.
Hayley, can I interrupt you? And to save your voice, I'm assuming people will have read it, so they can actually ask the questions, and that saves you the hassle. And
Perfect.
Simon.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, this is about extending it out, and I've not got any significant issues with the electric vehicle rollout. As I said at the briefing, looking at it from a taxi point of view, getting a taxi to the outer reaches of the universe that is Portsmouth can be pretty difficult. They would much rather work within the city, if you like. So we do need some more facilities for, certainly for taxi points in the north of the city, Cossam, not necessarily Drayton, but somewhere in the Cossam area that will serve that. And also the bus services out of Paulsgrove aren't the greatest, so there may well be opportunities in sort of the Alloway Avenue type area to do that sort of work as well.
These are essentially for taxis more.
Sorry?
These are essentially for taxis more than anybody
Yeah, that's
else.
what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. So that they are there. Certainly, you do get a lot of taxis because you've got, I don't know if it's still open, that bingo hall in the top of Cossam High Street that tend to hover in that sort of Paulsgrove and Cossam Wimmering area. And if we're going to promote electric taxis, then we're going to have that infrastructure up more in the north of the city. So even though I'm getting where you're coming at with this report, I hope the focus will look more to providing that sort of infrastructure going forward in the north of the city so that we can support that, and those taxi drivers could then feel a bit more comfortable about coming off the island.
Thank you. Graham.
Yeah, I'm happy to agree. It's not a problem. I'm happy to see those extended.
Right. Thank you. Noted. Thank you for the work being done on that. Now who's going to do the next one? I've got a new name here. This is the CERT Walk 80 and Route 801 and East-West Active Travel Corridor phase. Is that you, Andy? I thought it must be. As I said earlier, she's demob happy.
Very kind of you to
Can we assume that people have read and just want to ask questions? Again, it saves you the hassle, Andy. Right. So, Graham, do you want to start with your questions?
I mean, broadly, I don't have a lot of questions about this. I mean, I've had a chance to look at the map. I'm a bit clear about the routes now. I mean, this, I suppose, will be interesting when we come back with the detailed designs in June, with seeing how it actually looks, and then people might have some specifics about what's proposed and how it looks. So I think at the moment, I'm obviously happy to see the work progressing on it. So I think I might leave the detailed questions today.
I have a very similar view to Graham on this one. It's for information only, and it's let's see how this works going forward. But having got some clarity on the map, it sort of makes joined up sense in that respect. But I think this one will probably come back at some point, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, and the officers are creating these maps which you know sort of will show the progress, so that you can see the network developing. Do you understand what I mean? So you're happy? So you've waited all this time, Andy, and I'm so sorry. But can I congratulate you on the report? Because, I mean, I don't know who was involved in it, but I mean, it's a really comprehensive report. Brilliant. Thank you. And I think it's the last, is it the last one now? She said, with hope. And that's, Joe is not here, so who's going to do this? Is you, Michelle, is it?
I am
Accident Casualty.
deputising for Jo, as she is, it is her.
Yes, I think she's imbibing, isn't she?
She's on a social engagement related to her leaving the organisation, I think we can safely say.
Are you going to present this or just be taking...
I can present, or if I'm just taking questions, I'm equally happy to do
Yes, because all the information is there. Simon.
Again, Lynn, it's for information only about accident and casualty report. And clearly this will actually feed into LTP4 and what we're actually looking to address around the city from these accident statistics. So they sort of are what they are, really.
It always worries me, though, when you get the headlines, that Portsmouth is the second worst city in the country, and then people say, you should be doing something about this, that and the other, when a lot of the results are coming through, a huge amount is individuals' error rather than the infrastructure within the city. But I know that from what Michelle has said, when they go to the site visit after an accident, any sort of defects or possible defects are immediately looked into and then put on a priority list. So we do respond as a whole team to any...
Just one sort of wider question, because we've had the changes in the highway code that now give cyclists and pedestrians priority at junctions. So I'm really hopeful that we don't see a significant jump in casualty reports on the basis of that, because I've already seen it in a few instances where, and I have to say they're primarily teenagers that are giving it their, well, I've got right of way, I'm just going to keep going come what may, and expecting the car to take evasive action where they're not totally familiar with the changes that we've actually got in the highway code, although they should be. Will we be taking that into consideration when we go forward with any accidents that may occur at junctions where there have been traditionally not? Is that going to become a part of the assessment as to whether it is? Because I wouldn't want to think that we're going to go out and change every single road junction in the city, not say unnecessarily, but there are some that we probably can do that to, on the back of drivers not being aware of the highway code changes.
Michelle, have you got any comments on that?
Thank you, Councillor Bosher. But the first thing we're going to do is to be proactive in getting the message out there. So we've already shared the Think resources, which is the National Road Safety Campaign. So they've gone out on our social media and through our other communication channels. We're also developing a much more sort of Portsmouth-centric communications campaign that we can spread the word to local residents, to make them aware of the changes in priorities and to make them aware of how everyone needs to obviously take responsibility for themselves and for others on the road network. The accident and casualty report, obviously the intention is to publish that every year. The data that's in the report that you have at the moment is the 2020 data. Due to the pandemic, the release of the 2021 data has been delayed, but fingers crossed we will get, because we get it from Hampshire Constabulary, they will get back on track. It's obviously been the additional workload related to the pandemic. So yes, that will identify the patterns, and if there are patterns in the fact that the change to the highway code has happened and people haven't realised, then obviously we will continue to get that message out there. In terms of infrastructure, the prioritisation will remain the same, so it will be speed data, it will be casualty data, it will be anecdotal evidence. As we discussed on the briefing, we're launching the Pedestrian Near Miss app, So that will give pedestrians the opportunity to be able to report that information to them, which they haven't previously had before. Cyclists can use the existing Cycle Near Miss app. We have the Route for You app, which obviously you can report obstructions on the highway too. And Hampshire Constabulary also have a report antisocial behaviour or traffic incidents section within their website. So all of that data is collated and used when we're making decisions about where the funding needs to be spent.
Do we need to put out some information about, because we're introducing a lot more Copenhagen-style pavements, aren't we, crossings? You know, where it's a continuous pavement going across the end of a road at a junction. I mean, are people going to be aware of that?
We would certainly do corresponding communication with the public, so whether it be through social media, press releases,
right, okay.
Whenever each new scheme comes to the point where it's going to be used by the public, we would make sure that the appropriate message got out there, yes.
Because theoretically that should help, shouldn't it? The pedestrians have priority at junctions as long as the drivers are aware.
Yes. In my personal opinion, and obviously related to the Highway Code, yes, it will obviously help. However, as Councillor Bosher has pointed out, this is a change from the established pattern of behaviour. So the first thing we need to ensure is that people are aware of that change to the pattern of behaviour that they need to make and know what they have to do. So that will be our first focus. And then with any future schemes that we implement, we will make sure that that message reflects that.
Thank you. Councillor Heaney.
Just to comment on that particular issue, I mean, I have noticed that drivers are now tending sometimes to stop as you approach a road and let you cross rather than turning immediately into it. Not every time, but I've noticed that. And my rule is they're bigger than me and more dangerous, so I'm not going to step in front of them if I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. But I think it has had some effect on people's behaviour. I mean, I know I obviously keep an eye out for that now when people are crossing, just to see if they are, then slow down as well. Sometimes it annoys the person behind you, but there we are, that's the way it is. Yeah. Yes. Just going into the statistics, I wanted to just ask a couple of questions, really. The table on page 3, or page 153, depending which one you use, has the reasons for accidents in a sort of bar chart, and interestingly, failed to look properly is the largest one. And it's also got an other category at the bottom, which seems to cover quite a few things, and I'm just wondering what that includes. Because there's quite a lot of others above it, and then the other category seems to be quite large as well. And what does that include?
I don't have that information to hand, but I will certainly find out for you and get back to you. It is obviously contained within the appendix, which is the actual report itself, but I'll have that collated for you and sent through.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, or ask some questions about, were the hotspots that have been identified. And just to clarify, obviously I understand where the M27 eastbound Portsbridge roundabout one is, understand that. The A2047 Kingston Road, I'm not quite sure which bit of it that it refers to, because again the map at the bottom of page 2 is a little bit unclear, and I can't be quite sure I understand which one it is. And then I know Victoria Road, Goldsmith Avenue, that's presumably the junction with the roundabout, and then there is also one on Milton which has a dark dot near close to that. I'm not quite sure which junction that is. Do we know which ones those are? Yes, that's what I was thinking, but it's quite small to see. I don't know if that's the roundabout there. Which one's there?
The Milton is the Winter Avenue by the Shepherd's Crook.
Oh, right, yes.
That's the one that's referred to on the map. And the others are basically a continuous line down London Road, Kingston Road, the A2047. We have previously carried out remedial works there with advanced stop lines and additional cycle lanes. But yes, that is still very much an accident corridor hotspot.
Okay.
Okay. The risk of introducing controversy into the meeting at the late stage, I couldn't help but read the news report about the issue of the traffic things, and Simon actually made a comment about it, which I wasn't quite sure was actually evidenced by the report. He said the volume of traffic imports doesn't help with the administration, made a critical error early in the pandemic with the closure of roads, which diverted even more traffic into the centre of the island and undoubtedly led to the number of accidents going up in 2020. I mean, as far as I recall correctly, the roads that were closed during the pandemic were obviously the seafront roads. There was Castle Road, there were a couple under the Tricorn, Railway View and all of that. And I can't really quite see whether that was actually the case. It said undoubtedly, and I don't think the report actually does back up that claim. Anyway, I don't think the report does actually back that up,
Well, perhaps we can pick that up and run with it at some future point.
We can certainly provide a response. In response to the Eastern Road, it was discussed, but it was never because of the way that the pandemic was moving, and the fact that there was the Active Travel Fund was released with different criteria. The work that's now being carried out on the Eastern Road to create a segregated path on the Eastern Road is actually like the sort of the follow-on from those discussions. So something has been done, but not necessarily what we first discussed.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we all go, this is Pam's last meeting, and I know she's DMOB happy, but we're going to miss you, because you've been really brilliant as Director of Transport and really put transport, it's going in the right direction. It's coordinating it and it's forward-looking, forward-thinking, forward-planning. And that's due to your leadership. So I'm not saying that nobody else, because I mean there's a load of other people as well who are backing you up and supporting you all the way along the line. So we're going to miss you, and good luck in your new job, and come back. No, it we'd be sad to see you go. You're not the only one going as well, because Joby just going to see Joe off as well. So, and then Hayley Trower later. So, but thank you for all that you've done. Thank you, everybody.